I used to think detaching from someone meant you stopped caring. Now I think it might be the opposite. I think it might mean you finally started respecting yourself enough to notice the moment caring stopped being returned. I remember the exact evening this idea took root in me, because it started with something so small I almost didn't register it. I was sitting across from a friend, someone I'd known for almost 6 years, at a diner we used to go to every other week. Same booth, same order, same easy rhythm we'd built over time. Except that night, something felt off. Not wrong exactly. Just off, in a way I couldn't name yet. She was telling me about a problem at work, something about a coworker who kept taking credit for her ideas. I was listening the way I always listened, fully, the way you do with people you've decided matter to you. But halfway through, I noticed she checked her phone. Then she checked it again. Then she started a sentence and didn't finish it, her eyes drifting to the door every time it opened. I told myself it was nothing. People get distracted. I'd been distracted plenty of times myself, sitting across from someone while my mind wandered somewhere else entirely. So I didn't say anything. I just kept listening, kept nodding, kept doing what I'd always done, which was show up fully for people and assume they do the same for me eventually, even if not right that second. That assumption, that eventually people show up the way you show up for them, is one I carried for a long time without ever examining it. I think a lot of us do. We treat consistency as a kind of proof. If I keep being reliable, keep being patient, keep being the version of myself that doesn't ask for much, surely that adds up to something. Surely it gets noticed and returned in kind. The strange part is, nothing dramatic happened that night. No argument, no confrontation, no moment where anyone raised their voice. She paid for her coffee, I paid for mine, we hugged goodbye like always. But walking to my car, I had this thought that wouldn't leave me alone: I don't think she was actually here tonight. Not physically. Physically she was right there. But there's a difference between someone being present and someone being nearby, and I hadn't let myself notice that difference before, mostly because noticing it felt like betrayal. Like I was accusing someone of something they hadn't technically done. Over the next few weeks, I started paying closer attention, and not just to her, to a handful of relationships I'd never really examined. A coworker I always covered shifts for, who somehow was never available when I needed the favor returned. A family member who called only when something was wrong, never just to talk. I'd known these patterns existed for a long time, if I'm honest. I just hadn't let myself look directly at them, because looking directly at something means you eventually have to decide what to do about it. There was one afternoon that really cracked it open for me. I was helping that same friend move apartments, spent almost the entire Saturday carrying boxes up 3 flights of stairs, no complaints, because that's what you do for people you care about. At one point, exhausted, I sat down on a step to catch my breath, and I overheard her on the phone in the next room. She was talking to someone else, laughing, saying something like, "Yeah, he's always around, it's kind of convenient actually." Convenient. That word sat in my chest for the rest of the day in a way I didn't fully understand yet. I didn't say anything. I finished helping her move. I even smiled when she thanked me at the door. But something in me had shifted, quietly, without any outward sign. I remember driving home that night thinking about how strange it is that the moments that change us most are rarely loud. Nobody yells. Nobody storms out. You just hear one sentence, or notice one absence, and something reorganizes itself permanently in how you see a person. For weeks after that, I kept trying to talk myself out of what I'd heard. Maybe I misunderstood the tone. Maybe convenient wasn't meant the way it sounded. I think this is something a lot of people do. We become lawyers for the people who hurt us, building their defense before they've even asked for one. We do it because the alternative is uncomfortable. The alternative means admitting that someone we invested time and energy and loyalty into may have simply been investing in us for what we provided, not for who we were. I started noticing how much energy I was spending trying to explain away small, consistent signals, the delayed replies that weren't really about being busy, the plans that only existed when it was convenient for her, the way she remembered details about people she'd just met but forgot things I'd told her twice. None of it was cruel. None of it was intentional, probably. That's the part that took me the longest to understand. Most people who quietly disappear from a relationship aren't villains. They're just people whose attention naturally flows toward what serves them, and most of us don't examine that flow closely enough to catch ourselves doing it. The turning point for me wasn't a big blow-up. It was much quieter than that. A few weeks later, she asked me for a ride to the airport, early morning, inconvenient timing, the kind of favor you say yes to without thinking twice if you're the person I used to be. And for the first time in years, I said no. Not coldly. Not with an explanation. Just, I can't make that work this time. And then I didn't offer an alternative, didn't apologize 3 times, didn't soften it the way I always had before. It felt almost violent, saying that sentence. Not because it was harsh, but because it was so unfamiliar. I sat with my phone in my hand afterward, half expecting some kind of consequence, like the friendship would collapse right there in that moment. It didn't. She just said, "No worries," and figured something else out. Life continued. The sky didn't fall. That's when I understood something that changed how I think about relationships entirely. Detaching from someone doesn't require anger. It doesn't require a dramatic exit or a final conversation where you explain all the ways they let you down. Sometimes the strongest, healthiest thing a person can do is simply stop showing up in the exact same way, without announcement, without punishment, without needing the other person to understand why. I used to think emotional strength meant enduring more than everyone else. Staying loyal longer, giving more chances, being the reliable one no matter what. Now I think emotional strength looks almost the opposite. It looks like noticing early, and acting quietly, and not needing a big confrontation to justify protecting your own energy. What surprised me most wasn't the distance that grew between us after that. It was how little I mourned it. I expected grief. I expected to replay old memories and question myself. Instead, I felt something closer to relief, like I'd been holding a weight I didn't know I was allowed to put down. I think about that diner booth sometimes, the way she kept glancing at the door while I talked about nothing important, just being present with her the way I always was. I don't think she meant any harm. I genuinely don't. I think she was simply a person whose attention followed convenience, and I was a person who mistook consistency for connection. Here's what I've come to believe, slowly, through moments like these rather than any single realization: the people who detach quickly and calmly aren't the ones who feel less. They're usually the ones who've learned, sometimes painfully, to trust the small signals instead of arguing with them. They've learned that you don't need proof of betrayal to justify protecting your peace. Sometimes a feeling, quietly and consistently confirmed over time, is evidence enough. I don't know if she ever noticed the shift in me. I don't know if she thinks about that Saturday, or that phone call, or the ride to the airport I couldn't give. Maybe she doesn't remember any of it. Maybe I was never as central to her story as she was to mine, and that in itself is a strange thing to sit with. But I keep coming back to this question, and maybe you will too: how many relationships are we staying fully present in, while quietly being treated as something merely convenient? And if you noticed the answer tonight, would you have the quiet strength to walk away without needing anyone else to understand why?